In 2021, a Norwegian teaching student was accused by her university of, quote, self-plagiarism. The Norwegian Minister of Higher Education had taken a hardline stance on plagiarism, and in 2023 fought the student's appeal. On the 19th of January 2024, the Norwegian Minister of Higher Education stepped down from her post, after a student revealed that she had plagiarized her dissertation.
Jeg trekker meg som forsknings- og høyere utdanningsminister.
Shortly thereafter, the Norwegian Minister of Health was also accused of plagiarism in her dissertation. She claims no wrongdoing and, as of making this video, has not yet stepped down. Details on the beginning of this story are a little mercurial due to how universities and the Norwegian justice system handles privacy. But sometime in 2021, a female teaching student failed their take-home exam. In Norway, you're allowed what's called a continuation exam. It's where you take the exam again. Usually, you're allowed to attempt an exam in Norwegian higher education 3 times. On one of her subsequent attempts, she had reused 2 paragraphs from a previous exam she had written in the same subject, presumably from a past attempt that didn't go so well. The Inland Norway University of Applied Sciences decided that she had committed what is called self-plagiarism. She hadn't plagiarized the textbook that she had cited in both instances, but she had plagiarized herself by using something that she had submitted to the university before, without citing it. Because of this, she was barred from attendance for 2 semesters, which came out to a year. Self-plagiarism is a bit of a weird one, because it's not inherently as much of a problem as plagiarizing someone else's work. Self-plagiarism can only really happen if you actually put in the effort and do the work yourself. Self-plagiarism is when you deceive the reader into thinking that what they're reading is something new. There are a lot of reasons why this can be a problem, and the degree to which self-plagiarism is a problem varies greatly. One of the major challenges faced by academia due to self-plagiarism is that of redundant publication. Essentially, there are a lot of studies out there that say the same thing, because they in fact are the same study. That means sorting through citations and making sense of the way that this knowledge built upon itself over time becomes a mess. This in itself can cause all kinds of problems. Here is an example. Say that you have 4 studies. Study A1, A2, B, and C. A1 and A2 contain self-plagiarism. They're one study that in part or in its entirety have been published twice. Study B cites study A1. Study C cites study A2. Now, if someone found that study A1, the first publication of the study, had errors or incorrect findings, that could invalidate study B, since it cites it. If this happens, the authors of study B would re-examine their findings in order to find out if they were right or if they were wrong. But since study A1 and A2 contain the same research, that also means study C might be wrong. But the authors of study C have no idea because they cited the duplicate study. And nobody knows it's a duplicate, so nobody knows that their research might also be wrong. This creates a sort of chaos that can tarnish the scientific record. There are ethical components to this as well, of course, and there are researchers who might do this to pad out their number of publications without doing as much work. But whether or not self-plagiarism counts as a form of cheating or unethical conduct has to be evaluated in the potential effects it can have. The Office of Research Integrity for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says the following in their article on self-plagiarism. Quote, "In examining these types of malpractices, the reader should keep in mind that the various forms of self-plagiarism are best thought as laying in a continuum, in which the extent and the type of duplication can vary from substantial to minor, as does their potentially serious effects on the integrity of the scientific record." Self-plagiarism can be less serious, even an almost negligible issue in certain circumstances, something to correct for sure, but not always indicative of a lack of academic integrity. The student in question, who was charged with self-plagiarism, appealed the issue through the Internal Appeals Board, then the External Common Appeals Board, and eventually it went to the Oslo District Court, where she lost. The External Appeals Board consists of 7 members and is appointed by the Ministry of Education. Their leader at the time when the student's appeal was processed was Marianne Klausen. She processed hundreds of appeals and subsequently punished hundreds of students. Her second was Professor of Law Bjørn Henning Østenstad. Østenstad vocally dissented against the idea of punishing self-plagiarism with 2-semester suspension, and eventually in the spring of 2022 he resigned from the board. Regular members of the appeals board are appointed for 4-year terms. Marianne Klausen was appointed in 2015, 1 year into the first 4-year term. Then, in 2018, she was appointed for a second term. And then, in 2022, the Minister of Higher Education, Ola Borten Moe, appointed Marianne Klausen to a 3rd term on the appeals board. There's a problem with that, though. It is illegal. No member of the board may be appointed for more than 2 terms. It's written clear as day under paragraph 2 of the law that regulates the appeals board. Professor of Law Tarjei Bekdal at the University of Oslo asked the following question, quote, "Is 3 terms more than 2 terms? He subsequently answered his own question, quote, "Yes, therefore the appointment is illegal." The leader of the appeals board that processed the student's appeal was not actually legally allowed to do so. The Ministry of Education annulled the appointment in September 2023 and appointed a new leader. The decisions made by the board nonetheless stayed and have been upheld in court. The student, however, after losing in the Oslo District Court, appealed again to the Borgarting Court of Appeals, which began handling the case on November 17, 2023, and finally on December 3, 2023 published its decision. She was cleared of all wrongdoing. Almost 2 years after she had gotten a 1-year suspension from her university, she had appealed all the way up, stopping just short of the final Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court of Norway. This will come up in just a moment. The court relied on the guidelines for the exam procedures of the University of Innlandet to come to their decision. The exam required APA-style citations, which explicitly allows you to reuse your material without citing it, so long as it's, quote, limited in scope. This comes straight from the American Psychological Association. The court found that 2 paragraphs which were partially reused did not constitute a significant part of the exam, and that this alone means that the student did not violate the exam's rules and guidelines. Quote, and this translation is mine, neither does a closer assessment independent of the APA rules point towards cheating by the student in any objective sense. Of course, it didn't end there. Sandra Borch was our most recent former Minister of Higher Education. Up until this point, I've abbreviated the title to Minister of Higher Education, but the full title is Minister of Higher Education and Research, which is a part of the Ministry of Education and Research, which I have abbreviated as the Ministry of Education. The reason I clarify that is that we have a Minister of Education and a Minister of Higher Education. It's very easy to get confused. Sandra Borch is a member of the, quote, Centre Party. They are an agrarian-focused centre-left party that governs alongside the Labour Party. On the 10th of January 2024, Sandra Borch announced that the Ministry of Education was going to appeal the student's acquittal to the Supreme Court. Though this time, the ministry had determined that the student would not have to testify to the Supreme Court, and all costs would be paid by the state. This was also the case for the former appeal, but that was only because the state lost. In the appeal, the ministry is asking for 1 semester suspension instead of the initial 2-semester suspension that she got. Norwegian students don't tend to like the Minister of Higher Education at the best of times. The Minister of Higher Education before Sandra Borch, Ola Borten Moe, was declared persona non grata by the student parliaments of both universities of Oslo and Bergen in 2022. Side note, Ola Borten Moe bought shares in the Norwegian weapons manufacturer Kongsberg Gruppen, and was a part of government cabinet meetings discussing contracts with Nordic Ammunition Company, which Kongsberg at the time owned 25% of. He, of course, eventually had to resign, and an insider trading investigation was initiated and is still ongoing. Back to the story. One evening in January, a student by the name of Kristoffer at Oslo Studenten on Twitter, decided to look into Sandra Borch's academic history. He skimmed through her master's dissertation and very quickly found strange shifting prose, language dipping in and out of formal and informal, sentences getting longer, and the choice of words getting more varied. He popped the entire text into Google and got 2 results. One was her master's dissertation published in 2014. The other, a report published in 2013. When I saw the tweet, it had something like 30 likes, but the post must have been seen by someone at the business paper E24, who were the first to print an article on it. Strikingly, the article accusing the Minister of Higher Education of plagiarism made no mention of Kristoffer. The day after, E24 claimed that they did not know about the Twitter posts. They claimed that they were made aware of them after they had published their article. The timing is conspicuous, with their article being published a day after Rytterager published his findings about the master's dissertation on Twitter. E24 reached out to Sandra Borch on Friday, January 19th. Roughly an hour after they had contacted her, she informed the Prime Minister of her intention to resign, and in a press conference at the Ministry of Education that evening, she officially stepped down from her post as Minister of Higher Education. She admitted to wrongdoing and apologized, as one should. Sandra Borch's master dissertation was checked by her university for plagiarism in 2014 using a system called Ephorus, which checks against past dissertations at the university as well as against material accessible on the internet. Nothing was found that would indicate cause for concern. The reason for this was that the higher education sector at the time did not have a shared database for written exams and dissertations, meaning in theory anything could be plagiarized from another university and nobody would know, unless the material had also been published on the internet. The Ephorus plagiarism control system was replaced by one called Original. The process of replacing it was completed in 2018. According to E24, a total of 3,452 words of her 15,794-word dissertation were lifted from other dissertations. In total, she plagiarized 6 different dissertations. By E24's count, 21.9% of her dissertation was plagiarized. Most of this came from one written by Sund Hodvik and Svela in 2013, making up a shocking 8.8% of her entire dissertation. Here's an excerpt from Tanja Øystad's dissertation from 2005. which Sandra Borch lifted 7.5% of her dissertation from. The part within quotation marks from the top paragraph is from Borch's dissertation. The part within quotation marks in the bottom paragraph is from Øystad's dissertation. I'm going to highlight the parts of the paragraph that are identical. The identical parts from Borch's dissertation will be highlighted in orange, and the identical parts from Øystad's dissertation, written 9 years prior, will be highlighted in yellow. I will also remove the text written by the author of the article, so as to only show the text from Borch's and Øystad's dissertations. It's a 1-to-1 match. Keep in mind that this paragraph is only 53 of the 1,190 words that Sandra Borch stole from Tanja Øystad. Side note, her replacement, the Minister of Higher Education Oddmund Hoel, was just revealed to have overreported the number of members of a language preservation org he was in charge of, in order to appropriate more state funding to the organization. This happened in the 1990s, and it was in order to help preserve language dialects and a Norwegian variant language called nynorsk, so the optics are much better than what Sandra Borch did. So I don't think anything else will come of it. With Sandra Borch stepping down, the plagiarism scandal might have ended here. But it didn't. Days later, on the 21st of January, another plagiarism story broke. Ingvild Kjerkol's full title is the Minister of Health and Care Services. Henceforth, I will refer to her as the Minister of Health. She's a member of the Labour Party and a representative to the Norwegian Parliament. VG or Verdens Gang published a story on the 21st of January where several text similarities between her master's dissertation and other texts were found. The day after, VG said the percentage of text similarity was at 2.47%. Former Minister of Higher Education Sandra Borch's master dissertation contained over 20% text similarity. They also reported that that morning, Ingvild Kjerkol had made the following weird-as-fuck Facebook post, which, translation mine, says, "Happiness is not a life in peace, but the struggle to be who you are." This is a lyric from a song, and she cited it down to the individual lines. I have absolutely no idea what was going on here, but it's very funny. As I mentioned, the Minister of Higher Education's dissertation contained over 20% text similarity. This is a lot more and a lot more significant than the 2.47% in Kjerkol's dissertation. However, more similarities were being discovered every day. The day after, VG found 8 new instances of text similarity with incorrect or lacking citation. Here are some examples that VG found. The first is from a state project published in October 2017. The document is cited in some places and appears in her dissertation's bibliography. However, sections that are identical to the report also appear without citation. An article about digitalization published for an IT conference in 2018 called Nokobit was equally cited at points, but text from it also appeared in her dissertation without citation. There is another instance where the material is explicitly cited, but she's also quoting it word for word while leaving it ambiguous whether or not she's quoting or paraphrasing. This one is kind of a laziness thing, or potentially debatable whether or not it's an actual issue. I don't view it as such. That same day, the 23rd of January, DN or Dagens Næringsliv, the state broadcaster NRK, and a Reddit user also found text similarities. First assistant Professor Thomas Laudal at the University of Stavanger had initially defended Kjerkol, saying he didn't believe this was an example of cheating or similar misconduct. However, after further analysis came out, he changed his opinion. He cites a line in the dissertation as quite serious. The line reads, translation mine, "An issue that was found in our research, or in Norwegian, en problemstilling som kommer frem i vår forskning." This section of the text also appears in a report from the Buskerud and Vestfold University College, but Kjerkol never cited that report. The assistant professor says this goes from an instance of technically cheating, by just being lazy, to stealing other people's work. The text in essence portrays these research results as Kjerkol's own. This is one of the worst kinds of plagiarism. He says that were this caused by laziness, he would have docked her grade. On the 6th of February, VG published another analysis which concluded that 12.2% of the dissertation contained text similarities. Almost half of these text similarities are from 16 other master's dissertations which Kjerkol did not cite. The dissertation with the most text similarities was written 3 years prior at the same university as the one Kjerkol attended, with a total of 741 identical words. Kjerkol's university has yet to reach a verdict on her dissertation. Once a verdict has been reached, this information legally must be withheld from the public, unless the student themselves wishes to publicize it. Kjerkol has said that she will do so. It remains to be seen if she will. If she's found to have plagiarized, then she's placed herself in a catch-22. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I think the only logical thing for her to do is to publicize it when the time comes. I started the script in January of 2024, thinking the story would unfold relatively smoothly and Sandra Borch's story being more or less over. Then the Minister of Health's plagiarism allegations broke, and things got more frustrating and annoying for me and everyone else who cared about this case. On the 6th of March 2024, Dagbladet reported that Sandra Borch's dissertation was not going to be annulled because of cheating or plagiarism. This was a leak, and we had not yet seen the actual verdict. Remember, according to E24, 21.9% of her dissertation contained other people's text without citation. She hounded a student all the way to the Supreme Court of Norway over 2 paragraphs of self-plagiarism. During their first assessment, they decided to dock her grade due to missing citations and text similarity, instead of annulling it, which is very strange to me. We've learned that her dissertation earned her a D, and in Norway, Ds get degrees. According to Khrono, in 2023, the University of Tromsø assessed 15 instances of possible cheating, and only cleared 4 of the 15 accused students. It's very rare that someone who is accused of cheating is cleared, so expected her degree to get rescinded. The verdict was to be delivered to Sandra Borch on Monday the 11th of March. That day came, and the university said they had finalized their decision, but Sandra Borch said she had not yet heard from the university. For 3 days I heard nothing, and was going ever so slightly insane. Then, on March 14th, Sandra Borch publicized the results. Her master's dissertation was annulled, and her degree was rescinded by the university. She will have to write a new thesis and qualify for her degree once more. She did not receive a 2-semester-long expulsion, as it's almost been 10 years since she attended the university. Luckily, the leaks were wrong. The reactions to this seems to have been mixed. The lawyer of the student that Sandra Borch went after for self-plagiarism thinks that this is not enough. In his own words, translation mine, quote, "I've never heard of a student that's being treated as lightly as Sandra Borch is in this cheating case. To have your master's dissertation annulled is not a form of legal punishment." Essentially, in my reading, the bare minimum is being done. She's not actually facing any consequences for cheating beyond the cheating not working, after it had already worked for 10 years, and she had presumably benefited off of a fraudulent degree for that entire time. As for Kjerkol, she was re-elected as the leader of the Trøndelag Regional Labour Party, to nobody's surprise. This is a post that she has held since 2020. The reason I make videos like this one and the Greenland one is that almost every time I see the Nordics brought up in the international media or on YouTube, it's to glaze us and talk about how we've got it all figured out. We've got our top PR guys out there, people like Bernie Sanders, running a pretty powerful psyop to make it appear as if we've got things on lock. In fact, it's so powerful that we tend to believe it ourselves. We've figured out a lot of things. Our politicians do sometimes have to step down if we learn that they've had a conflict of interest, usually concerning their investments in some company, often an arms company. But just like in the United States, where Nancy Pelosi's husband is free to invest in things as Nancy Pelosi herself makes policy decisions that impact their investment portfolio, so also was former Prime Minister Erna Solberg's husband free to invest in things, while she makes policy decisions that impact his portfolio. Of course, she claims that she had no knowledge that he was doing this, and the police conducted no insider trading investigation. To briefly illustrate, here's a short rundown of some prominent government ministers who had to step down as a result of some scandal, and one that didn't. Minister of Fisheries Per Sandberg had to step down after it was revealed he made an unannounced trip to Iran with his 30 years younger girlfriend, taking his government work phone with him against the wishes of the Norwegian security services. Minister of Justice Sylvi Listhaug and present leader of the far-right Progress Party stepped down after she made a Facebook post alleging that the Labour Party cares more for the rights of terrorists than national security. Ola Borten Moe had to step down as Minister of Education due to a conflict of interest stemming from his investment in the arms industry. Minister of Culture Anette Trettebergstuen had to step down after she had given positions to her friends. Minister of Defense Odd Roger Enoksen had to step down after it came out he cheated on his wife with an 18-year-old student when he was 50 years old. That student characterized the relationship as somewhat abusive. Minister of Justice Tor Mikkel Wara stepped down after his wife set fire to their car in order to frame a woke theater group who had filmed their house as part of a performance. His wife was sentenced to 1 year and 8 months in prison for, quote, an assault on democracy. Tor Mikkel Wara now works for First House, a company that does PR and crisis management for corporations and public figures. Foreign Minister Anniken Huitfeldt from the Labour Party stepped down after her husband had traded in stocks while she was Foreign Minister. Conservative Party leader Erna Solberg did not step down after her husband had traded in stocks while she was Prime Minister. These are just a few highlights. There are numerous others. Norwegian politics sucks. Not for the politicians, though. They rarely have to face real consequences for their actions, and that's my opinion. Of course, having to step down is a consequence of some sort, but just like how the lawyer of the student affected in the self-plagiarism case said, these aren't legal consequences or anything of the sort. Them stepping down is actually a thing that benefits them, because it means the scandal goes away faster and they can get back to doing whatever they're doing. If your government minister plagiarized 21.9% of their dissertation, you step down and odds are you'll be allowed back in government later on. Or you'll get to go on reality TV like every other Norwegian politician does now. But if you're a student living below the poverty line, you better make sure you don't make any mistakes, especially not plagiarizing 2 paragraphs. They will come for you. And they'll take you all the way to the Supreme Court apparently. These things happen in Norway just like everywhere else. There's nothing special about us. People talk a lot about how strong the social safety net is that's provided to every Norwegian citizen, but people talk less about the far stronger safety net provided to the average politician. Thank you for watching, and thank you to the patrons who support this channel. If you'd like to see videos early, have your name in the credits, see behind the scenes content, and so on, check out the Patreon link below.